As you saw in Adam 7-Day, extreme cold is on the way.
Yeah, that's right. Along with our lower than average snowfall, those temperatures pose a serious threat to our homes, heating systems, and pipes.
And Northern News Now's Isabella Zandra breaks down how to prepare and react.
It's not uncommon for Northlanders to at least occasionally find their pipes frozen, but some might not know how to handle the situation.
The longer you let it go, the worse it could get.
Joe Ligman is owner of Advantage Air and deals with heating, cooling, and plumbing, making him no stranger to frozen pipes. He suggests if you find yourself in that situation, the first plan of action is to get a plumber or professional on the phone.
Call somebody and get there right away before it gets too, before it keeps getting worse.
He adds you should also shut off your water supply. Some people may decide to ditch the plumber and take matters into their own hands, using open flames or other types of heat guns to thaw their pipes. However, not only does Ligman suggest homeowners take a different approach, there's another group of professionals that second that notion.
It's not uncommon for us to have a house fire that is started by someone thawing pipes.
Howard Huber from the Superior Fire Department says it's extremely risky to thaw pipes without the help of a professional. He thinks many people do it on their own to save money, but says it's simply not worth the risk.
A fire will be way more expensive and way more inconvenient than just doing it the right way.
In terms of prevention, Ligman said one of the best things to do is take action before those low temperatures hit.
If you maintain your heating system, get it checked every year, have them go through it real thoroughly, could alleviate a lot of problems.
In Superior, Isabella Zadra, Northern News Now.
Thank you, Isabella. Now, both Ligman and Huber also suggest homeowners who have experienced frozen pipes in the past to let their faucets drip to keep water circulating and to keep their house at a reasonably warm temperature to prevent further issues.
Coming up.